Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Greg Sterling from LSA, and welcome to the Local Data Hub, the future of small business websites. And I just wanted to make a statement about GoToWebinar. They were having an outage and there were some problems, so if there's any technical issues, that may be to blame. It looks like people are coming in and able to get in, and hopefully we won't have any problems, but they were having earlier today a pretty significant outage. But we're going to go ahead and get started. Good. Thank you, Andy. I see that you're here. Good. Excellent. All right. So this webinar will be archived after it's completed. You'll also get a link to the rebroadcast. But when you go to the lsa.org, you can pull down the drop-down and find our past webinars there as the screen indicates. Rory, this is like a children's TV show now. Hi, Rory. Hi, Terry. How's it going? As you guys can see from the question box, you can submit questions at any time, and we'll get to them at the end. Matt and I will get to them at the very end. And hopefully you have lots of provocative questions and comments. Before we get into the meat of this, a little self-promotion here. We've got some upcoming LSA events for those that were at the LSA 18 event. Hopefully you had a good experience. We've got Place Conference London coming up on June 15. That's about location intelligence, proximity marketing, indoor marketing, and maps. That's an enterprise-focused conference, and we're working on putting together a GMB hackathon that would happen the previous day. That's not formalized yet, but Google has proposed it, and hopefully we can make it happen. New York City on September 18, the U.S. Place Conference, and then small business focused event, Tech Adoption Summit on November 7 in San Francisco, and Mono is a participant sponsor, was a sponsor of that, and is very involved in that program. And that's about the future of small business services and SaaS services. Okay, next slide. So here's Matt, and there's me, and I still look very, very much like that. That picture is actually probably about 15 years old at this point. I've got to get a new one. But anyway, on to the next slide. And so this is a report called the Local Data Hub that we put together with some input and ideas from Mono Solutions, and you'll hear more about this later, but you guys can download this report. It's a free report. It's going to expand upon some of the content that we're presenting today, and you can see how persuasive and interesting it is. This is the TOC here, and this is one URL, the Mono Solutions URL. You can get it from. It's also available on our site, but our URL was uglier, so I didn't put it up. All right, next slide. Okay, so this is probably what many of you are thinking when we talk about small business websites. You know, small business websites in general don't matter as much anymore with Google and Facebook and others kind of adding more and more data and structured content at a higher level, especially in a mobile context. Organic reach is dying. You know, Google is monetizing mobile search, the local pack, more and more ads. Organic traffic or organic links are getting pushed down, especially in a mobile context. And there are some people who would even argue, oh, SEO is done, it's over. The SEO that we knew in the past is over. I don't totally agree with that. I think it's changing and evolving. I mean, if you were paying attention to Google I/O, they announced actions and slices, and those are going to be sort of part of a new, you know, kind of more expansive SEO in the future, I think, but that's not what this is about today. The slide that you're looking at is data from Rand Fishkin and JumpShot, and it's an analysis of the divergence between the desktop and mobile. The pink line is mobile, percentage of mobile searches where there's no click-through to a landing page or an underlying website. So what this argues is that people are getting their questions answered in the knowledge panel, GMB results, the local pack, maps, etc., without going through to a website beneath that. So that seems to validate the thesis that websites are not playing the same role that they used to. Next slide, and we can debate that. I'd love to hear your sense of whether you agree with that or not. So I think one point that can be made without much dispute is that what we're seeing, especially in a mobile context, is lots more data, more structured information. These are mobile screenshots from Google and Facebook and Yelp for the same painting company in San Francisco. Next slide, please. So what you can get from these mobile pages and apps is you can get almost everything, or in some cases more than you can get from a traditional small business website. Phone numbers, directions, navigation, reviews. You can message the business. You can often make reservations. You can get a ton of photos, as that lower right screenshot indicates, of their work, their jobs. And in many cases, and this is certainly true in Yelp's context, requests for quotes, requests for proposals. I mean, you can do a ton of stuff without ever going through to the underlying website. Next slide. And again, if you guys are paying attention to Google I/O announcements, or you might have been there in some cases, Google announced this totally amazing thing that they're calling Duplex, which is a combination of their natural language processing, speech recognition capabilities, and their AI machine learning stuff. And what it's intended to do, I'm sure there will be many broader use cases for it, but what it's intended to do is allow a user to initiate a phone call to a business for a reservation or a booking, and the computer conducts the whole thing. The computer makes the call. The computer actually verbally interacts with the business owner and responds to questions. I mean, it was totally amazing. You should go to their blog post about this and listen to these recordings. It's very controlled. These are selected recordings, but nonetheless, the computers are interacting with the humans in a natural language sort of way, and it's just really kind of mind-blowing. And so this is another example of technology that's kind of, fulfilling some consumer objective or need completely within the Google context. Next slide. So as I alluded to earlier, a lot of small business websites are crappy, plain and simple. You know, they're not mobile friendly, they load slowly, they have poor navigation, their content is old or it's very thin, and overall there's a frustrating user experience or bad user experience. And this is, I think, driving a lot of the behavior when people just look for simple information. They don't want to have to go down to some poorly designed website and fish around for stuff. So they're getting more and more of that just directly from Google or Yelp or Facebook. Again, we'll get to your questions at the end of the session, so feel free to submit them, and we're getting a few of them here. I'm seeing them come in. Feel free to submit them, and then Matt and I will talk about them at the end. Okay, next slide. So having said all those disparaging and mean things about small business websites and websites in general, and the value and the role now that Google and Facebook, Yelp, and Apple Maps and others are playing in a mobile context in particular, what we can say with confidence, and this is just one of dozens of studies that say essentially the same thing, most people will look online for information before they make an offline purchase. They're doing research, they're getting information, they're going to go offline and fulfill or eat the meal, buy the thing, whatever it is. And what you can see here, this is a net sort of survey, what you can see here is that Google is the #1 resource and then the website after that. So a majority of consumers using the internet to help them make purchase decisions, they're fulfilled offline, websites still prominent in that mix, above Facebook in this particular context, YouTube and Yelp. Next slide, please. This is a study that LSA sponsors, conducted by Burke. It's called the Local Media Tracking Survey, and it asks people on a daily basis for a year, thousands of consumers, what did you use to find local business information? Lots of questions about media usage. And this is consistent with the previous study. So we see search engines as #1, and then websites as #2 in terms of resources that consumers use to get information or help make purchase decisions. And in this particular case, websites were the most helpful, notwithstanding all the problems with some small business websites. Websites were regarded as the most helpful media. Next slide. Or medium, whatever is grammatically correct. So in an ideal context, what websites will do is that they provide deeper information and they help people have confidence to make buying decisions. There's additional information that sometimes doesn't show up on the high-level SERPs or tools that are being offered by the big platforms. This is a Thrive Analytics survey. We work with Thrive Analytics at LSA. It's part of a study called the Why Before the Buy. And interestingly here, this was done in 2016, interestingly, among 5,000 consumers, about a little under a third of them said, we wouldn't even consider using a business that didn't have a website. So you've got pundits and experts out there saying, websites are just totally irrelevant now, and we're going to see enterprises abandon their website and less relevance. So this is an interesting thing. Now, admittedly, it is 2016, but this is pretty interesting to see. Next slide. This is a BrightLocal Consumer Review Survey. They've been doing this for a bunch of years, and you may have seen their research before. It's been pretty widely covered. They ask about the value of reviews and all kinds of questions about reviews. And so the question here is, what's the next step you take, consumer, after a positive review, after you read a positive review? And in 2016, it was go to their website. And now there's been a drop-off, which seems to validate the earlier discussion about sort of websites playing a smaller role. But nonetheless, go to the website is still a prominent action. So I think the conclusion here, and Matt is going to expand upon this, is that it's really not a discussion about should I have a website or should I focus my energy on, GMB or Facebook or Yelp or whatever, or Apple Maps. You got to do both. And Matt's going to get into why and what the function of the website is today. Next slide. So he's going to expand upon this stuff, and this is some of the things that we talk about in the report. So I think there's a shift in the way that websites should be considered. You've got to look at them now as a data source. Also, as I indicated before, consumers who are pretty low in the funnel will turn to websites to get deeper content than you can get in some cases on the platforms. And in fact, amid all the places that you can advertise or distribute your data or whatever, this is the only owned media that the small business has as a general matter. I mean, there's YouTube and that kind of thing and blogs, but this is really it. So that's a significant thing. And then, and Matt will get into this, there are some service provider benefits, meaning for the agencies or the marketing tool providers or platforms or publishers that are working with small business customers. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt, who's going to expand upon these points and get into a little bit more detail. And take it away, Matt.
Cool. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate the context. And of course, before I start, I do want to just say that we're happy to be here. We're happy to be involved with the LSA. And we thought that the conference last week was fantastic in both content as well as attendance. So keep up the good work. For those that don't know me, my name is Matt Maturja. I'm Director of Business Development for Mono Solutions, based in our Denver office. For a little context, and for anyone that doesn't know who Mono Solutions is, here's the obligatory sort of mono pitch. At the heart of it, we're a software platform that enables digital service providers to create websites at scale in an efficient manner without compromising on design quality or performance. We work with many of the folks on this call within the directory, publisher, agency, and telco space, among others. And those partners have over 500,000 websites live on the platform today. And beyond our technology and our experience within the local space, what really differentiates Mono Solutions from some of the other, I'll put this in air quotes, site builders, the name brand site builders on the market, such as Wix or Weebly or Squarespace, is that we only go to market through channel partners, and we do so in a white label fashion. So we're uniquely focused on ensuring that our partners are efficient and profitable when building websites and web presence solutions for their SMB customers, even though the end solution is really empowering the business online. Our focus is helping our partners. So I've got roughly the next 35 minutes or so to talk to you guys, and I want to put into context first to define this concept that we've created called the Local Data Hub, and also sort of give you the journey on how we got here and what motivated us to team up with Greg and his team at the LSA to make this report in the first place. Of course, as Greg mentioned, that report is online and available for download, and you can read that at your leisure. So I don't want to just regurgitate those findings. So the second part of this, of sort of my pitch here, is I want to take it down from that conceptual level and really drill into the practicals of what the Local Data Hub means to the digital service providers for anyone who's providing services to small businesses, and share with you some of the data and findings, as well as the feedback that we're hearing in the marketplace that might go contrary to some of the things, as Greg mentioned, that the pundits and industry folks are saying. So when we look at the role of websites, as everyone knows in this call, this space, this digital space, is ever evolving, and there seems to be constant flavors of the month. I think with SEO, for example, if you look at it myopically, those rules can seem like they're changing every day if you follow some of these guys on Twitter and search engine land and elsewhere. But when you zoom out a little bit, there's definitely some long-term trends that persist, and end up realizing over time to be real changes in both consumer behavior as well as business practice. And so mono-solutions, we've been in the space for over 11 years now. We've seen these ebbs and flows. But, there's been this hovering question over the past few years of if a website even matters, as Greg said. And I think, the first real wave of this was probably about 2.5 years ago when we had Sheryl Sandberg come out from Facebook. And she said, Facebook business page is all an SMB needs, websites don't matter. That was the first wave of questioning that I was receiving in my sales conversations and partner conversations, questioning this notion of why do we need mono. And I think in some ways it's intensified in the last 18 months or so. You have companies like Yext and Nubrol rising to prominence, and then as Greg mentioned, you also have increasing sophistication with the amount of content that platforms like Google My Business and Google Maps are ingesting, or as of yesterday are actively seeking out with robocalls, and they're displaying that information, depending on verticals, with pretty rich data from everything from Q&A and reviews, menus, to of course even the ability to book appointments and schedule appointments without ever leaving the search engine results page. So, the question of do websites even matter? In my opinion, I do think it's a fair question, even coming from the lens of working at a company that has a platform for building websites. And I think it's a question the industry should be asking, as these platforms like Google and Facebook evolve, and as emerging technologies like voice search and AI become more common. And it's the question that led us down this path. And we looked at it really a little bit less through the lens of do websites not matter, but more so the lens of what role will websites play in the future. And I'll get back to the why we don't really look at it as websites don't matter as I kind of get through some of this content. But the conclusion we came to, and of course this is backed by some of the content in the report and some of it that Greg has shared, the conclusion that we came to is websites do matter, both to SMBs, but they also matter very much so to any partners on the call, any digital service providers. In the manner that they don't matter is they don't matter in the historical lens that we've viewed websites in the past. no longer is it just an end destination. And in fact, that's really the argument that we're making, is that it's a paradigm shift, and it's really a different mindset when thinking about websites and about the role of websites, the role that websites have in the broader digital marketing ecosystem, and the value that that websites are bringing to the table. And so this new concept that we've created, we've dubbed it the local data hub, and we see websites as being this local data hub. And the idea here is that it's not necessarily that websites are at the center and they're the end all be all, but that's like a transportation hub. So here in Denver, we in the last couple of years, anyone that's visited Denver in the last 2-3 years, has been a ton of development around Denver's historic Union Station, and so there's new hotels, there's new restaurants. For some people, that's an end destination when they're coming from the airport. But for other people, it's a jumping off point, whether they're getting a bus downtown or even taking a train to California. People are hanging out here, they come and go, but it's that hub that's kind of pulling all the pieces together. And that's exactly where we see websites in this space. So, a website, in the role of a website, it's where you can connect services. It's where you can store content and data. You can sync content and data in and out. So that for all this myriad of online channels that exist, directories and maps and all these different marketing strategies and methods, you have this one place that as a business owner and as a digital service provider, you control it. It's branded with a unique domain that you have access to make it what you want and make of it what you want to make of it, and you're not beholden to any specific company or technology and their whims, as we've seen specifically, I think, with Facebook in the past. But you have this hub where, rather than being beholden to these companies, you can actually support these companies, you can support these technologies, whether those are existing or whether they're emerging, things like voice search and the likes that we'll continue to see an uptick on. So while I think that I'm not going to argue with data. We will, and I believe this too, we will continue to see decreased click-through rates to websites themselves. That's a fact. But the point that I believe and that we're trying to make as a company is that that's okay. That's not the role of the website anymore. Website's no longer just an online storefront. It's not that end destination. It's sitting in the background and it's playing a critical role for the entire digital ecosystem. So as this local data hub, and as there's this new role for websites, I guess the next logical question for me is, what do websites need to have to be successful in this role as this local data hub, now that it's moving beyond the storefront? And SMBs need to have SMB sites need to have a few key elements. First and foremost, this is structured data and structured content. So we know websites are a very authoritative source of information. Google will agree to that. And when content is structured properly on a website using schema.org markup and JSON LD, the site actually now acts as this feed to the search engines, the directories, the voice search, etc. All these services that need this content in a manner that they know what it is and they can ingest it and then display it. So the website now it powers these local knowledge-based search results. It powers these voice search queries, and so the value here is in that rich content that originates on the website, and that only really works though if it's being marked up properly. Beyond the structured data, websites are also becoming more transactional and more personalized. So Another element or further elements that these SMB sites need to have, websites can act as this collection point for data and content. So not just content in the sense of name, address, phone. Certainly the website can also, just as it can push data out, it can ingest structured data from other sources and sync with other sources. And we do that with mono websites. But further, it's also being a collection point and a funnel to capture customer data. So whether that is through chat or form fills or having scheduling and booking on your site or e-commerce or otherwise, also acting as an engine to collect analytics data, all these things are working together to power both marketing strategies as well as personalization and as well as optimization. So, we think that another role of the website in all of this within the space is really having CRM naturally tied to it as being a collection point, and then reflecting that on the end website itself as well with things like progressive web apps and more interaction on the site, moving away from that static website. So I'm talking a lot about data and content. I think that's pretty clear. That's where we believe the main role of the website will be going in the future. In fact, it's really not hard to imagine that in the near future, as David Min and others have, that perhaps the website just gets relegated to simply a JSON feed of data and structured content. And we need to be prepared for that. But that said, for now, I wanted to put this slide on here just in defense of any designers on the line. So don't fire your designers just yet. Having structured data is very important, but we also see value in the website being creating trust with consumers, or specifically down the funnel. I forget the data point that Greg mentioned too, but especially on these big ticket items or something that might be a little bit more personal, the differentiator from just the data, and the differentiator that's going to differentiate you from just a data feed on Google My Business, it is that look and feel, the intangibles of a website. So the imagery, the reviews, etc. For now, that's so important. Maybe that won't be so in the future, but we still see that being important. So to summarize, really, this concept of the local data hub, no longer, so this is happening now for sure. As Greg mentioned just yesterday with Google I/O, they're enhancing Google Maps functionality. They're creating new ways with AI to go and get content that they can't otherwise get. This is happening today. We're seeing the click-through rates go down. Old school thinking is websites are static. They're dead end. They have inconsistent or outdated content. Maybe they're not mobile friendly, etc. If you have a website, and if your SMB websites are that, you are dead, and you are going to be replaced by Google My Business. I mean, that's just going to happen. So when people say do websites matter, those websites don't matter in our eyes. But forward-looking as a local data hub, new websites and how we should be looking at these websites going forward, they have to have the structured data. They need to have personalization. They need to support CRM and transactional things. They need to have all that is what we would consider a modern website today in today's ecosystem. And it's not, and that last piece, it's not just important for your small businesses, but it's also important for you as digital service providers as well. This is going to set you up for success going forward. And that kind of leads me into shifting gears a little bit now. In the second part of this little pitch, I want to zoom out from the study itself and really look at, okay, what does this all mean for you as a digital service provider? So a few things. As a local data hub now, as websites are now and have been at the core of any online marketing solution. They live side by side with social pages and directory listings, and they really make up that core presence. And once you have that, then you can start to begin to build off these assets. So, from adding a domain and emails, which those are also sticky products, all the way up to that funnel to paid media, marketing, SEO, etc. We see websites as the foundation for your customers online, but we also see we see websites as a foundation for what you as a digital service provider can build off of and build this SMB relationship on. Because in my opinion, when you and all your sales teams are getting Googled, Facebook, Amazon to death, name your large company, Yelp. If you as a service provider don't control the website, you will not control the SMB as a successful client in the long term. I think this is somewhat self-serving to say as a website building platform, but I also think we're seeing proof of this in the marketplace. So, these big companies, they'll continue to chip away at you, and they'll continue to bring the SMBs into their ecosystems. And that's why I think we see, why did Google launch its own site builder? Why did Square just last week or 2 weeks ago acquire Weebly for, I think it was $365 million? And why is Sheryl Sandberg arguing that all an SMB needs is a Facebook business page? I think it goes back to the point that I want to make, that websites are a really sticky hook into the SMB, and those companies, just as you should want to, those companies want that hook so that they can keep them in their platforms for everything else, whether that's ads, chat, etc. Because, of course, at the end of the day, they're trying to monetize those SMBs. So the rest of the data that I'm going to share in the next couple of slides is not in the report, and in fact, it's not data that we've shared publicly yet. But as we're obviously having a lot of these conversations every day with both our partners as well as prospective partners, we actually started to hear some trends and feedback from those conversations that bucked this idea and this current notion from the pundits that websites don't matter. And so we turned that around. We did some surveys both to partners using Mono as well as other industry leaders that are selling websites but may or may not be necessarily customers of Mono. And these surveys actually confirmed some assumptions that we had from these conversations and from the data that we have, of course, across 500,000 websites that we look at from our side, that websites actually matter to the digital service providers. And in fact, websites aren't dead. I would actually argue that our most successful partners are doubling down on websites right now for all the aforementioned reasons I've mentioned to get that hook. So some of these data points, 85% of digital service providers surveyed told us that website clients are a higher value client than non-website clients. We know from looking at our data that websites are a low churn product. They're sticky. But actually, we actually got confirmation that websites even lower the churn of other products. So, there's other industry data. I was at Vendasta a few weeks ago, and Jackie was presenting a lot of data that they have on churn. There's a lot of industry data that shows, as you get these SMBs to buy into more products, the more products that they're buying into, you're lowering that churn across the board. But specifically in our survey specific to websites, 63% of our respondents told us that websites specifically not only churn lower, but they also lower the churn of other products as well. Additionally, we see when I'm talking to sales reps, we see websites as an evergreen source of recurring revenue. And these sales reps, if you ask your sales reps, they'll probably tell you the same thing. They tell me that they love selling websites. They know that it takes a little bit more work up front, especially in saturated markets like the U.S. And elsewhere, where it's a rip and replace type of sale at this point. When a customer already has an existing website, it's kind of a double-edged sword for Mono itself, back to the point of stickiness. But they know once they overcome that hurdle, and when they win those deals, they're going to get a nice residual over time and over the lifetime of that website customer. And then when you talk to post-sales, when you talk to customer service and account management folks, they'll also tell you that once they have that website in place, they now have a clear path, and they've now been enabled to upsell. So kind of going back to websites being that foundation, now you can start to sell those the complementary services to the website, like CRM and e-commerce, as well as those more broadly speaking, PPC and SEO and all these email marketing, all these other digital marketing solutions. So that's what we're kind of hearing today. Looking a little bit more forward thinking from these same surveys. We found, and of course, Charlie Laughlin and Neil Polachek are finding a lot of this data with the Tech Adoption Index. But SMBs want an all-in-one solutions provider. We think that solution can start with a website and build off of that. We also are seeing more and more SMBs are asking for e-commerce, and they want to sell online. Certainly, you guys do not want them just selling on Amazon or eBay. So, what I kick back to you is give them an e-commerce site that they own. And of course, it's not going to be their only channel, but you can then use that to distribute and feed into some of these other distribution channels: Facebook, Amazon, eBay, etc. We're also seeing a growing trend in CRM. So our partners told us that 36% of their SMBs are looking for CRM. Some of the feedback that we're getting, CRM in and of itself seems to be a hard sell to the SMB, especially when you're calling it CRM. That doesn't really mean anything to the small business. But we're now seeing some of our partners actually just bundling in a CRM solution with their higher end website solutions as a value add, and as a funnel for the content and the leads coming in. It seems to be a really natural place to start, to have it really tied into the website to collect that content. And then finally, I tend to think we'll see this last bullet point increasing, especially as progressive web apps just sort of got the stamp of approval from Apple with the latest iOS release. I think we'll continue to see websites in general being more interactive and more app-like. And of course, Mono, we're ready to support this. But as consumers start to expect this, I think SMBs the demand from the SMBs will follow suit. So, just a final point here. Last reason maybe not to write off websites. We consistently also see data that SMBs actually want to spend their money on websites. So when there's a lot of industry studies out there from LSA and others where they go out and they poll these SMBs about where they're spending their digital ad spend, their marketing budget in the next year, websites still to this day consistently rank high on that list of priorities.
Okay, and if you want to read that report, rather than me sort of fishing for that URL, it's again available directly from Mono or from the LSA website, is just do a search for Mono Solutions, the local data hub, and you'll find it. It's free, worth reading, and then if you disagree, you can tell us why, or if you want to dive deeper into this, you can get into it. The next LSA webinar will be with Dialogue Tech on May. May. We're in May, right? Not March. I almost said that. On May 31st. So tune in for that, and there are more great webinars coming up. And Matt, just thanks very much for your time and your energy and your thoughts. Take care. We'll see you again soon. All right. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Greg.